But you didn't say that you were crippled because of the long torture. How did you survive from Rosa? Has your body ever changed in an instant? 12 Horsemen. I felt like I was getting stronger every time I reached a new level. I'm talking about the feeling of being completely reborn, not just in that realm. I've seen it before, through the late Sir Lorne. I experienced that myself the moment I decided to live for you. My body, which I was told could not be helped except by Numerus's sacred body, suddenly began to come to life. I could feel the misaligned and broken bones coming together and damaged organs recovering. Just as Ron was resurrected from death alone when fighting Gleek, Hito also underwent a reformation of his body. For a moment I even wondered if I had entered the same realm as Lord Soren. I soon realized it was just an illusion, but it was enough to fight right now. You and Sandra protected each other that day. I was pushed back because I fought without being able to adapt to the new situation and did not have a decent sword, but fortunately Rosa was also exhausted from breaking through to the experiment building. Thanks to that, we were able to hold out until help from the main unit arrived and Rosa escaped with gritted teeth. Afterwards, Hito naturally became part of Zippel. He had only 2 requests from Kiliak: getting his sword back from the Black Sea and staying with Sandra. Sandra gave Hito something no one else had ever given him: the meaning of living life. Something that neither the orphanage leader nor the first knight he killed nor Soren nor Kiliak nor anyone else had ever received. That's why you became the second-class butler. There was no more suitable position. From then on I learned a lot to serve her. Common sense knowledge and culture regarding royalties. I began to focus on learning what she was lacking. The young lady was no different from an animal, so I felt I had to tell her. Anything Hito could do for Sandra was insanely quick to learn. Among them, the thing I learned most quickly was how to live within the family. He learned early on that the family coveted his loyalty, but he also confirmed that there were many who had that suspicion. So I took on the role of a cleaner. As in this thread, he mercilessly purged those who held important positions with elements that could derail the work and eliminated those within the family who were squandering power through pointless conflicts of influence, by using overwhelming force. At the same time, he was not overly greedy, so it was natural that the leadership, including Kiliak, was satisfied with him. Hito quickly became Jeep's hidden powerhouse. The reason he did not change his position even after becoming powerful was because there was no need to do so. However, the only compensation he hoped for has not been granted to this day. Treat Miss Sandra as a human being, not an experiment, and give her freedom. That's all I ever wanted for my family. After taking power, he never made an outright request, but the family was well aware of it. There was no way Jeep would have allowed that. You probably thought your loyalty would disappear the moment Sandra gained freedom. It is true that the family tried not to let go of the leash, but that is not necessarily the case. I also thought that the family was most helpful for the young lady's safety. The reasons were the long-standing grudge between the family and Runkendal and the strange nature of the young lady, who could not change the international situation. Would it be possible to leave the family and live a normal life? Mississippi. Kiliak was waiting for the day when Hito would give his true loyalty to the family and not to Sandra. I was using that fact to create my own territory within the family, the 12 Horsemen. From your perspective, it's because of me that you made a mistake. There was silence for a while, and Jean suddenly remembered Sandra from his previous life. In her previous life, she had an arranged marriage with a low-ranking member of the Vimont royal family. At that time, it occurred to me that Sandra's marriage might have been the result of Hito's will finally coming to fruition. As soon as he could think that, Hito opened his mouth again and said these words. 12 riders. What I wanted to give her in return was a normal life. You will develop a normal personality, get along with other people, and one day find a worthy partner and spend the rest of your life together. If it weren't for you, I definitely would have done it. Jean did not respond but made eye contact with Hito. But that was probably what I wanted, not the life she wanted. Now I realize how easy it is. Hito pours the last remaining drink into his and Jin's glasses. I have a question for the Tower Keeper. What is it? It looks like Jeep hasn't stopped experimenting with Sandra since you took over, and you said that's what Sandra wanted. I think it was the choice for you. I didn't know the circumstances, so I told you it was cowardice, but I want to retract it. It is true that I was a coward, so there is no need for that. Of course Sandra agreed to the experiment because she wanted to help Hito. He thought that if he appeared obedient from time to time Hito would be less suspicious, and if he gained a semi-immortal body Hito would be less likely to get into trouble. 12 Horsemen. Speak. I'm honestly still skeptical. Even if the young lady and I become part of your family here, I wonder if it will really be better than the days when we lived in a stable manner in our family. Then what do you want to do? I'm not saying I'm going back to my family. When I look back, it was a life of always running from place to place anyway. In the end, life in the family was not a great time for either me or the young lady. I guess I should change the question. What would you like me to do? One day when I think there is no hope for Taiken, I will not hesitate to take the young lady and leave. Don't stop me then. I swear. Not only will we not stop you, but we will also not seek out and seek revenge on you and Sandra for betraying us. I don't know if I can trust your tongue. Aren't I a person with that much weight now? And above all, Jean turned around and looked at Sandra for a moment. Taiken felt that she had to make sure that she was a better option than her previous life where she married a member of the royal family. Even if she got married at that time, since Jeep still existed, Sandra would have been under constant surveillance, and there was a high possibility that she would have been used politically. Moreover, Sandra at that time did not act as crazy as she does now, so it could have been the result of mental manipulation. Rather, Jin's duty was to make people more free. I feel quite a debt to Sandra. She helped me many times and saved my life. Dealing with Rosa is my priority right now, but my ultimate goal also includes the destruction of Jeep. Once they are gone, there will be no threat to you and Sandra in the world. The timing of our departure may be earlier than the decisive battle with the evil spirit. I understand. Anyway, even if I scare you, it won't work on you. Losing power is painful, but I have no choice but to respect it. Maybe you are the type of person who gives in to power. Hito's smoke went out, leaving behind a trace of fire. But I sincerely plan to make sure that doesn't happen. I will help you and Sandra's long nightmare come to an end during your time at Taiken. As Jean glanced down at his glass, Hito lifted it. It was the first toast. Hito and Sandra will now remain in Taiken. Suddenly something you said a while ago comes to mind. Perhaps you are a descendant of a teenage knight named Bale. That's why the sword found you. It's not a coincidence. What Jean said while trying to appease Hito. Of course, Hito is not a descendant of Vale. However, there were certainly many uncanny similarities between the fates of Hito and Vale. My conversation with you also reminded me of Lord Bale's story. What he went through was not as harsh as yours, but just as you were reborn through Sandra, Lord Bale also found meaning in existence through Lord Sarah. Just as he had heard about Hito's past, Jean had already talked to Bale to some extent. Just like Hito, Vale was just a monster causing destruction everywhere until he met Sarah. That crazy guy, unlike me, doesn't seem to have any thoughts at all. I still don't believe in fate, but I have to admit that what you say is spot on. Jean smiled. I like to think of this as fate for the two of you. Hito shrugged his shoulders and took out a new pine smoke and lit it. The problem is more about what you asked me to do in the first place. Now that you and I are traitors, we cannot help you find your sister Jonah Runkendal in Akin. Well, that's true, but now that you and Vale are part of Taiken, things are actually better. Me and you, Lord Bale. If these three people directly infiltrate Akin and link up with Nameless, I think we will be able to reliably and quickly subdue the runaway Yona without Zippel's help. As soon as you betray them, you infiltrate the family's territory, so they make you do embarrassing things like that. If it's a burden, I'll just take Lord Vale with me. No, I will go with you. While I'm gone, I'll have to secure your sister and leave a greeting to the family. Thank you, Tower Keeper. Oh, and Jean offered to shake Hito's hand. Hito looked down at the hands for a few seconds and then held them together. From now on, I will use honorifics and be polite. Lord Hito, please forget the rudeness due to the special situation so far. Hito secretly liked Jin's words and replied, Then I will speak comfortably, 12 horsemen. Please take care of me in the future. Hito then turned his head to the pillar next to him. And please take good care of Miss Valeria. Let me tell you one thing, You have never been involved in anything related to Hister. When Jean and Hito entered the restaurant first, Valeria appeared from behind a pillar. Jean and Hito knew from the beginning that she was there listening to the story, and so did Valeria, but they did not show it to each other. Valeria leaned on the railing for a while and looked up at the sky. On May 6, 1803, an anonymous person contacted me saying that traces of Jonah had been found. Fortunately, Jonah had not left Akin until then, and the location was far from a private house or city. As soon as Jean received the call, he immediately boarded the Red Owl with Hito Bale, Bianca Caligo, and Ranka Hallowis, who came to ask why Bale was not brought back sooner. Jean, Runkendall, why are we? A hint of embarrassment was evident in Bianca's slow voice. Ranka didn't scream out of fear of Jean, but he looked very upset. Unfortunately, your Grand Duke made a deal with me. In exchange for allowing Orgel to meet Vale, I will absolutely protect Sandra and Sir Hito. Ah, protection. But I didn't say it was absolute. If you don't want to do it, go back now. Instead, our deal is broken. Ah, ugh. As Bianca held her head in frustration, Ranka eventually stood up and frowned. Oh really? It's too much to do. What kind of slaves are we to you? Do you want us to take responsibility for staying quiet if you want to be protected, or even taking unnecessary risks? It looks like Ranka Hallowis got hit less last time. It's great to see you make such a courageous statement. Prophet, even though I was defeated by you once. I am the first prince of the great fourth dukedom of the demon world Halavika, the ruler of the northern part of the demon world, and its creatures, and the owner of Mount TNA and Mount Carrion. I won't give in to power and give up my pride. Is that so? La Ranka. This is clearly an excessive and unreasonable demand. Bianca Caligo, you two stop stuttering like an idiot. This is a matter of honor for our fourth dukedom. Honor. Okay, it's honor. Well said. If you really don't want to help me with the deal, how about this? If it weren't for me in the snowfields of Ranka Cauldron, you would have been finished. Who was it that rescued you, who was lying like a piece of clay with all his strength exhausted? It's you. If you know, shut up and cooperate. Isn't it honorable to help a benefactor? The reason we went to the Cauldron snowfields while our benefactor was freezing to death is because of you. It was absolutely necessary for the great cause of the decisive battle with Rosa. It just means that it wasn't my personal story, but that it was right for all of our temporary allies to step forward. Still the same now. Sister Jonah is considered a god among assassins. Of course, it will be of great help during the final battle with Rosa, right? Don't nod your head as if you understand, Bianca. All right, Jean Runkendall. If this is a temporary alliance, why isn't there a Zippel? Is it burdensome to sing after removing that chunk of muscle? Even though it's for the greater good. Zippel is providing a location. If you don't like it that much, you're out. If you go back and explain the situation to your leader, he'll probably say you did a great job. And I think the reason you keep talking is not only because you hate work, but also because you are afraid of Jonah. What? You can be afraid of someone who can kill you before you even realize it. Ha, good. You look like I've looked really funny since you beat me, but I'll prove it today. This Ranka is strong and useful. But please know that after today, I have no intention of playing with your pranks. Good, great. Ranka didn't pull out of pride, and Bianca seemed to understand why she was pulled in. They're really easy to deal with. It made me wonder if all demons were this stupid, and Hito was also thinking the same thing. However, the reason people like Bianca and Ranka were revered in the demon world despite their unfortunate intelligence was because they were overwhelmingly stronger than that. In any case, Jean felt much lighter now that he had brought along the strong demons. Jean, Hito Bale, Bianca, Ranka, Owl, and other unknown top shooters. In fact, there was almost no one in the world that a party of this magnitude could not handle. Except for Chiron and Rosa, who became the evil spirit, there is no one who can deal with them all alone. As always, the Red Owl took them to Akin's forest in an instant. Are you here, 12 horsemen? It's quite a unique and reassuring combination. Owl did not know Vale's identity or why Kingelo came with him. When Jean explained it, he nodded as if he was very satisfied. I guess it would be okay if Yona got stronger because of her energy surge. If the goal was to kill Jonah, Jean alone would have been enough, but subduing him required twice as much strength. Not only is she strong, but she also has special abilities. Even in that respect, the party Jean led was not lacking at all. But if the situation prolongs, Jeep will definitely come. At that time, Sir Hito's betrayal could become a problem and cause trouble for Zipple. Well, I guess that doesn't matter either. It would be impossible to go to war with those here before the final battle with Rosa. Moreover, Kiliak is not in good condition either. Yes, Owl. I have already sent a letter to Zipple about this situation. It must have arrived soon. It would be better for them to cooperate so that Yona is caught before damage to the territory increases. It may be unfair and resentful. This cannot be said if the face is moderately thick. Also, this was only possible if he had the power to handle such an unreasonable act. Owl once again felt that the Jean in front of him had now become a person worthy of being compared to the pinnacles of the world. In just a few years, Jean had become a real tycoon. Furthermore, your level has risen one level higher than when you saw it in Hylon's second castle. Owl looked at Bale. Is it because you met Lord Vale that you broke another wall? Lord Vale, but it was because of Rosa. It's faster for Rosa to become perfect than for me to become stronger. During the fight with Vale, Rosa only looked down at Jean through the Paddler's eyes for a moment, but from that alone Jean clearly felt her power. She was clearly going beyond Orgel's predictions. That's a terrible story. So even enemies of 1,000 years are joining forces. Owl points to the forest spread out ahead in the distance. Jonah is currently somewhere in the forest. There were several battles, but we were unable to break through the siege. Or, it felt like they were waiting for the best time to kill us all at once. Instead of getting tired every time there is a battle, my senses are becoming sharper. In the final battle, Owl and Bison encountered Yona at the same time, and Bison almost died with a single blow. In that case, we can first burn the entire forest and find it, Bale said. If you do that, it will inevitably lead to civilian damage. Have you forgotten your orders? When Hito answered, Bale narrowed his eyebrows as if annoyed. I wanted to yell at her to tell her to shut up and that she would take care of it, but Sandra's orders also included instructions to follow Hito carefully. It would be best if only me and Lord Hito Owl go in to conduct the search. The remaining personnel wait at key points of the siege line and immediately enter that location when the signal flare goes off. If she finds out that we have entered and shows signs of running away, Lord Bale will be able to pursue her. As Vale released his power, a ring formed on his head and wings formed on his back, and golden energy overflowed. He could fly faster than a falcon. I think that would be good too. Anyway, the shooters on the siege line also have signal flares, so it will be easy to join either way. And Lord Vale, I would like you to serve as a liaison as well. The mobility will be overwhelming. Are you giving me orders? Follow the Vale quietly. Do I really have to say it one more time every time? Tisk. So the group dispersed and Jean and Hito Owl entered the forest. Unlike the others, as soon as Jean entered the forest, he felt Yona's faint spirit lingering everywhere. The remaining spirit is very weak and dizzy, but if I read it carefully, I think I can find Sister Yona. You mean you feel that? Yes, it is possible, because at some point my sense of chaos became strangely heightened. I will infer the approximate route of movement, so please give me advice whenever I find it difficult to judge. As I began to search for Jonah in earnest, I could barely control my increasingly dizzy mind. If Jonah is already in an irreversible situation, there is no other way to overpower her and bring her back. No, I'm sure you're coping well. The fact that no civilians have been killed so far is proof that she is resisting. If you don't miss this point, you will definitely come back. When the search continued for about 2 hours, Jean suddenly stopped and looked around. A look of embarrassment was clearly evident on his face. 12 horsemen, is there something wrong? Mr. Owl, the types of marriages have suddenly increased. What? It means that Sister Yona is not the only one using soul energy in this forest right now. It can't be. The siege line has been maintained ever since I met you in the second city of Hylon. Is there any possibility that someone broke through the siege and entered the forest? Or that there were chaos users other than Yona in the forest from the beginning? The former is not possible at all. It's a siege line that includes me and the best assassins, so it's absolutely impossible to break through by force, but it's absolutely impossible to infiltrate. Unless there is someone else with the same level of ability as me or Jonah. The latter? Wait, no way. Owl's eyes widened as he suddenly remembered something. Jean was thinking the same thing. If it's a fake Jonah, it's possible. Maybe the one we've been engaging in so far is a fake Jonah. The new spirit I discovered is only slightly different from what I felt before. The fake we encountered in Hylon has infiltrated the forest. If so, then the fake Jonah was in the forest before Nameless, or he infiltrated through the siege line through his own power or through the Prophet's den. In other words, it also meant that there could be multiple Jonahs in the forest, including real ones and fake ones. And there could be only a few reasons why the fakes came to the forest. Jean, if that's true, wouldn't you need a contract of truth? Jean shook his head at Hito's words. If there are multiple fake Jonas, it is very difficult to protect Yuria. There are two types of energy, so we will not distinguish between the real one and the fake one. After suppressing them all, we will try to distinguish them based on that. The group continued to move forward following Hongi's traces. If it weren't for you, we would have done something in vain without being able to distinguish between the real child and the fake one. Now, I'm not even sure that what we first found in this forest was really Jonah. Two types of marriage. Jean couldn't know for sure which of them was the real Jonah. First of all, no matter how many people I meet, I am confident that I will be able to defeat them all as long as it is not a joint attack. Even if they work together, it wouldn't be a problem at all from the moment they could completely distinguish between the real and the fake. If a large number of fakes entered the forest, the reason is probably to capture or eliminate Yona. In that case, Jin's job will not only include securing Yona but also protecting her. Owl was blaming himself for that very point. Mumayong carried out the operation without even assuming the existence of the fake Yona. Of course, it is difficult to predict that there could be fakes mixed in the forest. This is especially true because Akin is the only place where Yona was found. Jean said, recognizing his thoughts. After meeting you in the second city of Hylon, I made this mistake even though I heard clearly that fakes were created from the traces of chaos left behind by Yona. I don't have the decency to see that child. Owl, don't think about it too complicated. Anyway, there are two types of hornets and none of their owners have left the forest yet. We can just resolve it from now on. At least 3 and at most 5 or more. That's roughly the extent of the traces of Jonah's confusion that Mumayong has missed so far. Jean assumed the worst-case scenario and thought there were more than 10 fakes in the forest. Even so, it seemed like the current power would be enough to solve the problem. We need to speed up. I have a gut feeling that fake people are targeting you. Well, let's take a simple approach first. You two better cover your ears. Breath. Jean takes a deep breath. Sister Yona dash. Soon Jean screamed with all his might and several trees in front of him were broken and uprooted by the wind pressure. A loud echo rang throughout the forest as if an earthquake had occurred. If ordinary warriors not Hito and Owl had been standing next to him, his eardrums would have burst and he would have fainted. It's nice to have a good voice. If your sister was in the forest, she would have heard it. Thank you, Lord Hito. Owl, if you are somewhere in the forest ahead right now and hear my voice, how would you come? If you need to check my location. For the purpose of attempting assassination or observing trends. Owl understood what he said immediately. I want to see Jonah's travel route. Follow me. Instead of pursuing Hongi as carefully and meticulously as before, the party ran at full speed following Owl. Owl moved in a manner befitting the title of the Nameless King, and the speed at which he swept through the trees was almost similar to the speed at which Jean and Hito ran in a straight line. Above all, Owl barely made any sound as it moved. As if the wind was running, not a person. It is indeed the Nameless King. Is your sister Sal Shin greater than me? Maybe so. I heard that you surpassed Owl a long time ago when it comes to assassination. I have never heard your footsteps. While he was running like that, Owl suddenly stopped walking. This time he was the first to recognize an aura that others could not read. To live. In those words, Jean and Hito also read a story that felt weak. Real or fake? One side has clearly become closer due to the recent movement. Jean reread the remaining spirit nearby. There is still a much darker spirit than before. There are still two types, so it means that both the real sister and the fake one responded to my voice. Pop! As soon as he finished speaking, a red signal flare rose from the other side of the forest. Jonah appeared on one side of the siege line. Jindo also fired a signal flare. It was a yellow signal signaling something unusual. At the same time, a golden energy surged into the sky, and it was Vale's flight. He immediately headed to the place where the red flare exploded, and after a while he flew back toward Jean, with a face full of irritation. Vale, did you see Yona in the direction where the red flare was just fired? I didn't see it. They say it only did one surprise attack and disappeared. I was trying to search the area, but why did you suddenly call me? Surprise attack? How many people were affected? The guy named Kel was injured, only a small cut. Thank goodness. There are fake Jonahs mixed in the forest. What? Not one. Inform the rest of the personnel about this, and if they see anything real or fake, subdue them and bring them to me. Remember, never kill or maim. Captured alive and unharmed. If you decide you can't do it alone, chase after them and shoot flares to avoid harm to the encirclement personnel. Then first let's go after the guy who attacked Kel. Oh, what is that again? Pop, pop, pop. Unfortunately, Bale didn't have time for that. From that point on, signal flares began to be fired from all directions. Go check everything out and report the situation to Jean. Vale. I got it. Vale responds by flying into the sky. He did an excellent job of establishing real-time communication using his transcendent flying abilities. Your sister was found over there too. Ranka kicked her out. They said two people came out at the same time, and when Bianca responded they immediately ran away. I just encountered him, chased him, and injured him. Oh, I didn't inflict any fatal wounds. There is only a slight cut on the arm, so you can distinguish it from other Jonahs. In that way, Bale did an excellent job of serving as a real-time contact network like John Siogu. If it weren't for him, the entire search team would have been in great confusion. Ranka and Bianca also played a big role as expected. If Jean hadn't brought them all, there would have been several deaths already. Every time Bale reported, Owl marked the location of all Jonahs on the map and considered their expected movements, while Jean did not let up his concentration to more clearly distinguish between the two types of spirit. Because of Hito, the two were able to become completely immersed at times. Soon Owl selected several of the most likely routes among Jonah's predicted routes, and Jean perfectly distinguished the marriage stage. I'm sure, Owl. The real sister's energy is one, while the fake one's energies are multiple overlaps of the same thing. What overlaps is the energy of fakes. There are a total of 3 standards for fakes that are duplicated around here. This was the reason why Jean continued to focus on distinguishing between marriages after entering the forest. It was necessary to determine which of the two types of energy was unique, and the number of fakes had to be inferred through the overlapping energy. Furthermore, since my sister's energy is getting stronger, it is highly likely that anything discovered in other siege ships is fake due to time constraints. In other words, the real Jonah was currently closest to the group, with the 3 fake Jonahs. Then the route is narrowed down to 1 or 2 12 horsemen. Owl's idea of Jonah's travel route was no different, when the fakes are pushing to kill the real Jonah and vice versa. Either way, Owl was confident that Jonas would soon meet him. This was because every time Bale reported, the Jonahs on the siege line were moving deeper and deeper into the forest. It's as if they are narrowing the siege towards their prey. The fakes are probably causing trouble because of us and are trying to gather in the center of the forest. But there is one strange thing. What's strange? The real Jonah clearly has greater abilities than the fake. He could have already cut at least one of them by himself, but there are no traces of that. You're saying that Yona is just running away. Either Jonah is unable to perform normally, or there are other interfering factors. It would be best to go to the center of the forest first, Nameless King. Even when we reached the center of the forest, no traces of battle were found. Instead, the party started getting attacked from then on. Suddenly my back felt cold, and when I turned around, a knife flew at me, and the moment I tried to block it, Jonah's figure disappeared before my eyes. After defending the first, second, and third raids, Jean concluded, "The one who is attacking us now is really Yona. The energy does not overlap with other soul energy. 3 times were necessary because only the split-second moment of avoiding an attack could be confirmed. Besides, there are other fakes nearby. The fake souls are constantly intertwined and moving. That's one of the differences from the real sister. It's nearby." "Yes, and the things that were read to us earlier were also fake. Now that I've been attacked, the real Yona, she doesn't even leave behind even that meager amount of life. Even the inevitable wedding anniversary is so unrecognizable to anyone but me." Jean looked around with a confused expression. In other words, Jean and Owl's predictions were wrong. The fakes didn't move to eliminate Jonah, and the real Jonah wasn't running away from them. What the real and fake Jonahs were aiming for. It was Jin's group from the beginning. They had even been moving together ever since Unmayung confirmed Jonah's whereabouts in Akin. From then on, the real and the fake took turns taking turns so that anonymous people would recognize themselves as one person, so it was natural that Owl could not assume the fake. It's not that Jonah wasn't able to cut down the fake, but that he was cooperating from the beginning. The moment Owl said that the forest scenery the party was looking at quickly distorted. The trap laid by Jonas had been triggered. A black curtain rose from all directions, and Jean immediately recognized it as a chaotic subspace. The 3 people faced each other and drew their swords. Then a completely unexpected voice came out of the darkness. "Jean, it's been a while. Joshua Runkendall." It was his voice. "Joshua? I didn't know that idiot would appear here." Jean narrowed his eyebrows. As soon as the chaotic subspace unfolded and Joshua's voice was heard, Jean suddenly felt more annoyed than threatened. The feeling of a cockroach suddenly jumping out from under your feet. It's not threatening at all, but it's so unpleasant that it makes your teeth tremble. "It's been a while, but I'm not really happy about it." "Why are you here when you should be in the dungeon?" "You are asking the obvious. Isn't it because you have been forgiven by your mother?" "I don't think you knew I was there." Jean burst into laughter at those words. "Forgive me. Rosa is not a very generous person. You still don't know Rosa. He needs to receive recognition from her, not forgiveness. Tell me, Joshua, what was life in prison like? Since Rosa got you out of prison, it must mean you've grown a lot." Sigh. When Jonah's sword appeared and disappeared from somewhere, Owl's sleeve was cut. Jonah continued to wander around the 3 people like a ghost, extending his sword. "Yes, it had meaning. I really learned a lot thanks to you. Okay? To me, it just seems like the head has become more head-length. You still speak harshly. I'm the youngest. I have never had a brother like you. We can't even deny that we have the same blood. Although they were born in the same boat, their standing positions are different." Keto and Owl felt that Jean was losing his composure as soon as Joshua appeared. But rather than feeling anxious, I felt reassured. There is no way a man of that caliber would mess up his work emotionally, so this seems to mean that the new second rider is not something Jean should be careful about. Hee. Joshua, I never even imagined you showing up like this again. Then what did you imagine? If you were to ask me if I just wanted to rot in a dungeon, of course I would. I thought it would be best for you to end your miserable life there. That wish did not come true. Don't stop talking, Joshua. This is the last time I will talk to you as a person. So listen carefully, you trash. Jean is glaring at you as if he were going to rip a piece of the curtain apart and kill you. On the other hand, I hoped that you would gain some real enlightenment there and challenge me again. He also hoped that he would escape Rose's embrace and finally become a human being and become a more worthy enemy. I was like that, and Brother Deepu's was like that too. Why? Why do you think that was? If that was really your wish, it has already come true. I am in front of you now. You are in front of me? Jean smiled as if it was absurd and looked around. Where the hell are you here? Can you really say that you are standing in front of me when you cowardly put Yona at the forefront and hide like a mold and only speak out? I don't know what you learned in prison and why you're so proud, but you're the same now as you were then. It's the same Joshua. Chong. Hito struck away Jonah's blade that fell on Jean. Jean didn't even look away. I hope that you will become stronger and come back even if I and Brother Dyphus personally cut you to pieces, kill you, and throw you away in the street. Because it was futile. How could it be that our enemy who had been scheming against us for such a long time ended so vainly? And that wasn't because of my hand, but because of Rosa's one word. Why on earth did we fight you so hard? You can find out from now on whether I am the same as I was then. You have become more impatient than I remember. I will correct you that you are the same person as back then. In fact, you have become less valuable than before. The proof is that I am elated thinking that I have now fallen into your trap. You act as if the power you received from Rosa and the Prophet was entirely yours. What do you think you can do to me with a trap like this? Jean enveloped Bradamanti in blue flames. You idiot! I would have respected you if you had come alone and asked me to settle the matter even though I knew you would lose. Even if your body was rotting in a dungeon, and you couldn't use a sword, even if you couldn't even produce 1 star strength, I would have treated you with respect as an opponent. But you didn't realize anything in the end. Soon Jean spoke in a calmer voice and Joshua remained silent for a while. Without realizing it, he was recalling a story he had heard from Rosa in the past. You are not dead yet. And I look forward not only to the fulfillment of the prophecy but also to the struggle to shatter it. Your youngest brother Jean. It seems unlikely that the child's struggle will destroy the prophecy, no matter how absolute it is. If the day comes that your prophecy leads you from this dungeon into a world of real struggle, if you can endure that world, I will bring you back to the ground. Of course, like always, your prophecy will disappoint me this time too, just like you always did. Even then, Jean never forgot the struggle and Joshua was still there. Joshua still didn't realize that fact. So it was difficult for Jean to fathom why Rosa started using Joshua again. In fact, why would a monster like Paddler, who doesn't even need a military man, entrust this job to such a trivial person? There must be a reason, but I can't figure it out. It can't be just a whim. In the silence, Jonah's sword only occasionally passed between the group. In the end, because you couldn't stand on your own even after getting to this point. Please know that in the end you were not recognized by your father Rosa or me. Now I'm running out of patience with you as a human being. It's over. A new magic sword secret that Jean achieved on his own when dealing with Veil. The sword was pointing at a point in the Veil of Chaos. Then, like ice melting on a fire, a layer of the veil pointed at by the tip of the sword was removed, revealing the hidden fake Jonahs. 8 Jonahs, including a total of 7 real ones, were targeting the group in subspace. You have learned a strange sword. Second Rider, if I were you, I wouldn't be so embarrassed that I wouldn't even be able to open my mouth. No matter how broken you were, weren't you also a warrior? Now Jean is showing you areas you can never reach. So try to have a grateful heart. Shut up, Tower Keeper. As soon as they were revealed, Jonas hid somewhere again, and a new portal was opening where they disappeared. Monsters strengthened by chaos poured out from that dimension gate. Hito recognized that they were internal monsters that were originally supposed to be in the Black Sea. From then on, Joshua was slowly getting the intuition that his plan would fail. This is because the party was not shaken at all even after seeing Jonas and the demons pouring out in droves. The 3 people seemed to think that this situation was not the same. In particular, Jean has personally experienced the power of the powerful powers of the previous generation, such as Paddler and Lionel, as well as the power of the divine being Baal and the evil spirit Rosa. I wasn't even embarrassed by this puppy-like plan. So is this all you prepared? Your sister, the Fakes, and the group of monsters you brought up? Squeak dash. Jean cut off the head of a Fake with one sword. The Fake approached Jean but was unable to swing his sword properly due to the energy spread by Bradamanti's flame. At that point, Joshua was shocked and looked at Jean and the dead Jonah alternately. According to Joshua's thoughts, Jean should never have killed Jonas. Have you also decided to walk the path of overcoming the path of defeat? You kill Jonah without any thought. You speak as if you are a magician like Rosa. You are not a magician, much less a demonic swordsman. You are just a miscellaneous swordsman. Am I going to cut down Jonah? I killed it because it was fake. Jin's ability to instantly distinguish between real and fake was not included in his calculations. In fact, Joshua did not come here today with the purpose of eliminating Jean in the first place. He came to see how Jean continued to be in danger because he could not cut down the Jonas but eventually had no choice but to kill them all in order to survive and then struggled in hatred and despair. In this way he wanted to harvest despair and help Rosa. The immense despair of a special being like Jean was what Rosa needed most right now. Therefore Joshua suddenly felt as if his breathing was being constricted. I was suffocating because of the anxiety that I would fail and that I would disappoint my mother again. Of course Jean saw his inner thoughts like the palm of his hand. Still not feeling happy was like not feeling victorious over a bug. Now that I think about it, you and Aaron Beament tried to assassinate Dante. I failed back then because I researched in advance and the same is true now. Looking back, you've never beaten me. But both I and Aaron Beament are alive. Jean was reading the flow of soul energy that opened the portal. The intention was to trace the flow and find the space where Joshua was hiding. Are you proud of that? It's hiding quite far away. It looks like it's outside the forest. If you want to stop this disgusting behavior, just wait. I'll come find you after clearing the way. Of course, Jean didn't expect Joshua to wait patiently for him to go. In any case, it took quite some time to sort out the remaining 6 fake and real monsters. This is because it is not a matter of just annihilating everyone except the real Jonah. We had to deal with them perfectly to prevent them from escaping outside and causing casualties in the siege lines or civilian houses. So Jean was thinking of sending someone else to Joshua. Chua dash. Suddenly the top of the curtain split in half and golden energy poured out. The veil had torn the curtain from the outside. Oh, it was good because it was annoying. Hey Jean. Can I just sweep them all away? Except your sisters. You have something else to do, Veil. Can't you just let me kill them? Then I think some of the stress will be relieved. No. Let me tell you who to kill instead. Go outside the forest and find Joshua. Who is that? The one who formed this veil is probably around 12 o'clock outside the forest. There will be a regenerative resurrection ability, but you can rip it to death over and over again. That's not that bad, right? As Baal was about to lose his mind, Hito spoke up. What are you worrying about, Veil? Go now. Before he runs away. I got it. As Veil left, Jean fired a signal to signal the gathering. After the curtain of chaos closed again, the summoned monsters roared. The curtain was distorted by their energy, disturbing the view, and the Jonas began to move again. Did you plan on maximizing the abilities of your sister and the fakes by using monsters, Joshua? There's not a single corner of him that isn't base from top to bottom. Since Joshua had never reached Jin's level, he thought such a shallow plan would work for the 3 of them. Such pranks cannot disturb the senses of superhumans. Of course, considering the characteristics of Jonah and the fakes, even extremely minor variables could pose a threat, but even that was insignificant against the group. This is it. Jean, you must have had a hard time dealing with something like that as the second rider. It was embarrassing in many ways. Hito was the first to step forward and display his mastery of kendo. The sword energy spread like a wave, covering the monsters and creating a dazzling light. While bones and flesh were raining down indiscriminately, 3 of Jonah aimed at Owl at the same time. Unlike Jean, he couldn't tell the real thing right away, so he just parried the attack. Please continue to play defense against you and the fakes. I will organize them one by one. I get it. The remains of the monsters swept up in the kendo were gathered again to form another monster. It looks like they are regenerating faster than Hito's slaughter. Hito seemed displeased with that fact, and didn't like the temporary sword he brought, and frowned, raising his power even further. However, it was difficult to wield that power carelessly. It was necessary to prevent the proliferation of monsters, but if their power was doubled compared to now, the Jonas could easily be swept away. Should it be resolved through close combat? If you do that, the scope Jean has to deal with will increase and it will be bothersome. Just as Hito was about to think about it, something suddenly popped out of Owl's sleeve. It was thousands of threads thinner than hair. Each and every thread imbued with Owl's energy grabbed hold of the monsters. When Owl saw the monster disintegrating as it could not hold on, he even showed delicate control by adjusting its strength to tie it up. Oh, it will be much easier, Nameless King. I have been amazed by your abilities since a while ago. It was originally saved to restrain fakes, but since Jean can distinguish it, there is no longer a need for that. While the superhumans were exchanging well wishes, Jean cut down one more fake. Now all that's left is my sister and the fake 5. From then on, the Jonas did not carelessly target Jean. It wasn't a calculation of the situation, it was instinct. As Jean fought, Jonas was currently in a state of no reason. They were just blindly carrying out Joshua's orders. If the fakes had the level of judgment they had before Jonah exploded into chaos, the progress would have been a bit difficult. Grumbling. Jin's blurry magic sword illuminated the surroundings like a torch. Jonas was trying hard not to pay attention to the sword. This was because the moment my gaze rested on the fire of the sword, I felt pain, as if somewhere inside my body was burning. Jin knew very well that his sword, which he had not yet named, contained such power. So now Jin started looking for Jonah first. Every time Bradamanti cut through subspace, Jonah's appearance appeared for a moment and then disappeared like smoke. This will take quite a bit of time. In reality, Jin was unable to kill the fakes for a while and just explored subspace. However, Jin brought in strong men from each faction to prevent this situation. Sueya. Jin swung his sword with a bell and completely tore off one side of subspace. Eck! What a surprise! Wow! At the same time, Ranka and Bianca widened their eyes and looked shocked. They had just arrived nearby and were about to penetrate subspace. You're here. How did we come? How did you know? Oh, it's frustrating. Bianca, can't you speak faster? No way. How do you know? I read your energy. You read energy? Did you read the energy? Ranka and Bianca looked at each other and looked puzzled. Because of the veil of chaos, they were unable to sense the energy flowing from within. Anyway, come in quickly and put pressure on you and the fakes. It means to push forward while only defending. How can I push you while only defending, not attacking? You can do it because I'm putting pressure on you. And I'll say it one more time, it wouldn't be fun if my real sister got hurt. Now then, let's cheer up. Ranka cursed and Bianca nodded and entered the tent. As the two people were added, the Jonas began to focus solely on hiding, but Jean gradually became convinced that they would run away. The entrance where the Kinzelos entered has not been restored. This probably happened because Baal was looking for Joshua and fighting. When the veil was opened, it was immediately restored. At that time it was possible because Joshua was continuously sending soul energy here, but not now. He was so busy dealing with the angry veil that he couldn't pay attention to this at all. Jean pretended not to guard the empty entrance he had created. He deliberately walked away from the entrance and waited for Jonah to appear. Jonas, who had only instinct left, ran into the trap too easily. The moment Jean turned his back, a fake broke his hiding and rushed towards the entrance. Of course, the fake couldn't escape. PZZZZZZZ. This was because the magic power that Jean had planted at the entrance in advance formed an ice barrier. At that moment, Fake stretched out his sword and tried to break the barrier, but Jean caught him from behind. Where? Bradamanti pierced the Fake's back. The Fake trembled and oxidized, leaving a black lump behind. Are you Fake wanting to go out again? Jean said with a smile. Now, as the number of remaining Fakes decreases, Jonah's options are decreasing. Near the center of subspace, Hito and Owl were still suppressing the monsters, and Ranka and Bianca rushed in front of them and hit the wall every time Jin's fire found Yona. I can't go until I really come out. Wow, that idiot is helping us until the end. Jean carefully looks around. At this rate, I thought I would be able to deal with the remaining Fakes and take Jonah back within 30 minutes. But the good feeling was short-lived. Suddenly, the chaotic subspace began to vibrate unstably. Hey, do you think subspace will explode? Ranka shouted. Everyone else also noticed that subspace was showing signs of explosion. It was obvious why there was a problem in subspace. Joshua scatters the ashes as his last effort. Joshua, this bastard, is like this until the end. It looks like he chose to commit suicide after being beaten by Lord Baal. So we had to quickly change our strategy and respond. Everyone spread out and block the explosion as much as you can. The scale of a subspace explosion cannot be accurately predicted. The entire forest could disappear and perhaps even private houses in the distance could be damaged. As Jean shouted, Hito, Al, Bianca, and Ranka each spread out in all directions and took their places. Jonah also seemed confused by the sudden collapse of subspace. They screamed like animals caught in a forest fire and ran wild throughout subspace. And Jean brought up all his senses. No matter how powerful the explosion is, if those 4 people stop it with all their might, it won't be able to affect a private house. So he had to find and protect his sister. Right now she didn't have the strength to protect herself from an explosion like this. Even if there is, it is not Jonah but the power of chaos. The moment Jonah's body collapses, the power of chaos will naturally consume her and restore her. In other words, it meant that the physical transformation that Jean was most wary of would occur. The chaos that formed the subspace was converging to one point. In about 5 seconds all the force will converge and explode. Jean had to find the real one among the fakes and even catch her. However, there was a reason why the rest of the powerful, especially Owl, who cared about Yona as much as Jean, obeyed the instructions to endure the explosion instead of looking for her. That's why I'm sure. If it's Jean, it's entirely possible. Jean rushed forward and threw himself, like catching a child who is about to fall into the water. Sister! Yona was still holding the sword, but Jean didn't care and hugged her tightly. I almost got stabbed in the abdomen by Jonah's sword, but luckily I was able to get it out. Then as the subspace exploded, Yona closed her eyes tightly, and Jean held her and spread a protective shield. Quaya! Knock dap duck! The bodies of the fakes that had lunged at the siblings like hungry ghosts were disintegrating. Kia! Cack! The fire in subspace burned up the black lumps they left behind. The explosion, which started with a head-splitting roar, continued for over 5 minutes. The strong continued to swing their weapons and spread protective shields, and Jean was finally able to protect his youngest sister. Is everyone okay? Hito spoke first, looking around. You're safe. You withstood the most explosions and didn't have any residual scars. Shouldn't I also have something better than you? It looks like Kinjalo's executives are fine as well. Well, isn't that friend? Haha. I thought this was such a hard time. Ranka, I heard he's weak and can't be stopped. This. Knock. When Ranka screamed and fell down vomiting blood, Bianca hurriedly helped him up. Jean was behind them, still holding Jonah. His neck and back were full of wounds. Yona was still in a rage and kept clawing at Jean, but Jean was just happy. Sister. Now let's go home. Yona answered in a loud voice, and the rest of the group except Jean looked up at the sky at the same time. Floating in the sky was Jeep's fleet that had just arrived here. The flagship Kojak First Fleet was threateningly surrounding the party in the sky. Jean raised his head and looked at the fleet only after Owl had used the remaining thread to bind Yona. Ziffel was not only firing his guns, but it seemed as if he had come to eliminate the enemy, not the allies. It's natural. In the letter Jean sent to Jeep before coming to Akin, it stated that he would rescue Yona and that Hito and Sandra were leaving. In other words, the operation was carried out in Jeep's territory without permission, and even the key personnel were taken out, which was an indescribably unpleasant situation for Jeep. Jean turned his head and looked at Hito. He had a calm face, as if this situation was not that uncomfortable. There was a long silence. The fleet was not continuing its descent. I don't know who is aboard the flagship, so I don't know how to greet them. So let's skip it. But first I have to apologize. Because saving my sister was so urgent, I carried out the operation before receiving any answers. I will compensate you for all damages. Jin's low, energetic voice resonated heavily and shook the sky. There was no answer for a long time. Everyone heard Jin's voice, but those on the ground could not hear the conversations going on within the ship. It looks like Khadun is still healing. If that foul-tempered fire dragon had come, he would have already been yelled at 10 times. Then why are you holding the weight when it's about the size of Octavia or Ronald Zippel? I'm sure they discussed how to deal with Hito before coming. After the standoff lasted a few more minutes, a voice amplified by magical power was finally heard from the fleet. Lord Hito, I honestly didn't believe what the 12 horsemen said until I saw him standing there in person. But seeing you with the 12 horsemen, You really abandoned your family. As expected, it was Octavia. She did not hide her sad expression. Captain Ghost. The fact that he left without saying goodbye is something that has always bothered me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, is that all? How many years have we been together, and how many doors of life and death have we crossed together? If there was something disappointing about your family, you should have told me. How could you betray so suddenly? And even Sandra. The word betrayal is not appropriate, Captain Wraith. I have never been loyal to my family in the first place. The family has always cherished the scriptures. I know, but my master is only Miss Sandra. The family must have been aware of that fact to some extent. Yes, I know very well. Therefore Sandra was originally an experiment, but she gained freedom thanks to the scriptures. No, it's more than that. Sandra has received preferential treatment in every way. You know that too. But why are you sticking a dagger in the family? What deceived the Lord? Were you afraid of punishment for helping the 12 riders during your last vacation? That's right. That also counts as a reason. You idiot. Even if Kyung had returned as is, we would not have investigated Sandra or interrogated Kyung. Why? It's because I believed in the scriptures. I just happened to get caught up in the 12 horsemen's tricks, and I thought there was no way he did it on purpose. We were very kind to him. So you need to give me at least an understandable reason. Hito looks up at the fleet for a few seconds. He was looking back on his past days at Jeep. As Octavia said, there was nothing Zippel couldn't do. However, the family never recognized Sandra as a person. There was just a way for you to be happier. I now know that I was in the Black Sea longer than I was in Ince. The family has never regarded you as anything more than an unnecessary part of me. It's not a matter of attitude or treatment, it's a matter of sincerity. If my family understood that, I would never have left. Octavia had no answer. Of course, it was not because he fully understood and accepted Hito's position. I knew that no matter what I said, he wouldn't come back. Whatever the reason, in the end, it is the family's fault for not being able to guard people. I will respect it, Lord Hito. Jin's eyes widened at the new voice he heard. It was Baradin's voice. Unlike Octavia, who was barely able to control her heightened emotions, he spoke in a calm manner. Sagaju. Instead, I should tell you one thing. Sandra Ziffel will definitely be unhappy because of your choice today. Hito did not answer. Jin, you probably told Lord Hito that you can leave at any time. It's so accurate it gives me goosebumps, Baradin. Did you at least eavesdrop on us? Because it's an obvious story. You also probably knew that since we were facing a great common enemy, we would have no choice but to overlook Lord Hito's betrayal. I admit it. For this reason, it became necessary for me to crack down on it. If Lord Hito is not on the battlefield when we engage in the final battle with Jean Runkendall Rosa, we will immediately cancel our temporary alliance. In addition, the same goes for Jonah Runkendall, whom you saved today through your actions. Isn't Jeep an alliance formed because it can't deal with Rosa alone? You talk as if we're the only ones who have regrets. The situation here has changed thanks to you bringing Hister in to recover. Of course, this does not mean that alliances are not needed at all, but it does mean that they are no longer essential. It seems that all of these biogolems can only exert their strength near the sacred site. Okay. We are looking for a way to send them out of the Holy Land. As of now, the moment you leave the vicinity of the sacred site, it stops working like a doll with its strings cut. It means dying. I don't know why it looks so unpleasant. Do you really think that being a magic swordsman is a privilege exclusive to your family? Baradin's words reminded Jean of the demonic swordsman biogolems he had seen in Ziffel's sacred place. I also remembered the trump card manipulation of history that Ronald Zippel had mentioned during the first meeting. It seemed unlikely that they would be fully prepared. If that were the case, I wouldn't have bothered to make threats like this. This is a harsh warning. I don't think these are empty words, so keep that in mind. Well, I think we've sorted out our positions now. Can we just ask one question and then leave? Say it. As you can see, the chaotic subspace just exploded. We tried hard to prevent it, but was there any civilian damage? I think I looked into it on the way. There was none. Thank goodness. Then let's go. Please organize the damage compensation and send it to Tychon. As Jean turned around, Jeep's fleet also slowly began to circle. Soon those heading in their respective directions quickly moved away. Jean was and still is when he met Baradin in the Holy Land. From then on no trace of the Baradin he knew was found. I felt like I had regained my family and lost a friend. I have to get that guy back someday like Yona. I don't think it will be easy. I couldn't wait to go back and start purifying and have a conversation with my youngest sister. That would be the only consolation right now. Garden of Swords. Rosa was looking down at her first son with an expressionless face. Joshua. I once again wasted my strength and ran away like a dog. Joshua lost his physical body 5 times in battle with Baal. Each time Rosa's energy was consumed and Joshua used power beyond her permission. Joshua, who was down on one knee, couldn't even raise his head. After being pulled out of the dungeon, Joshua was convinced that he could accomplish anything. I thought I would never disappoint my mother like I did before. He became the second rider again, and the power of the evil spirit given to him by his mother was infinitely vast. Her mother even showed signs of being quite excited, unlike when she crashed her. I will help you, so try to defeat the youngest. Mother, I have never had a son like you. Please name it correctly. But nothing changed. He is still not the youngest, so he is breaking his mother's expectations, and the briefly good atmosphere after his return has already turned into frustration. I'm sorry, matriarch. Yes, you also had a mouth on the topic. Make an excuse again. What made you fail this time? I have no words to answer. The plan wasn't thorough, the power given wasn't enough, or there were other variables. Nothing could convince my mother. Self-loathing that boils beyond words. Joshua truly felt like he had become worse than the trash in the back alley. I have nothing to say. When I took you out of the dungeon again, I thought something had changed about you. So I gave him strength and gave him the job. It wasn't that difficult. The idea was to use Jonah's clones to kill Dante and make the youngest suffer. The nightmare of his fall seemed to be coming back to Jean as he saw his mother calling him the youngest, even though he was not his son. One more time. Give me a chance. Why should I do that? It has already been proven that even with my strength, the youngest is still an insurmountable wall for you. That. I can't answer any questions. Couldn't breathe well. So when Joshua let out a sigh like a person who had unconsciously fallen into the water, Rosa shook her head coldly. Go back to the dungeon until I call you. Deepus will replace you in the future. When Joshua turned around with a blank face like a person who had lost his temper, Elena followed him. Elena consoled Joshua and told him to calm down and wait a bit, as she would somehow hold off on disposing of him. After sending Joshua away, Elena returned to Rosa and sighed deeply. Even when I was working through Joshua, I was so upset and driven crazy by his incompetence. But I never thought it would ultimately help the head of the family. Destiny is really interesting. If he were the youngest, he would have recognized my intentions long ago and resisted. This funny thing is a play. There was only one reason Rosa took Joshua out of the dungeon. Yes, that stupid bastard won't even know until he's done his job and disappeared. The strangely pure despair that Joshua has built up and is still steadily cultivating. That was all Rosa needed from Joshua. Therefore, for the first time, Rosa saw Joshua as a useful person. No matter what abyss he fell into, he would never give up and continue to despair. It is through the hope called prophecy. Holy King Rani. After rescuing Yona and returning, Jean was able to meet King Song, who suddenly visited Tychon. The person who called her to Tychon was Owl, and the reason Rani accepted his request was because Nameless was now officially part of the Bamul Alliance. If Owl had contacted her as an unknown person rather than as part of the Bamul Alliance, Rani would not have accepted it. Is there a person here who came back after almost 3 years and only sent letters and entrusted difficult tasks without even showing his face? Rani said, pretending to pout. After Jean returned to Ins, she dedicatedly healed Talaris, who had been evacuated to the Holy Kingdom, and also looked after Valeria, who had been injured by Runtia, but this was the first time she had seen Jean in person. Jean smiled awkwardly. Even though he met someone he was happy with after a long time, Jean couldn't put on a good expression. Rani. No way. It's been a while since I thought about joking around, but I'm not in the mood for that. There's no need to explain that I'm not really upset, right? Of course. Ronnie patted Jin's shoulder. She too was going through a lot of hardships as a Saint King and a key figure in the Chaos Repulsion Force, but it was heartbreaking to think that the burden on Jin's shoulders would be much heavier than that. I am very grateful, but if it weren't for Muraken, I would have already died and Songguk would have suffered all kinds of exploitation under Jeeple until now. Even now, as soon as I return, I am struggling with all my might for the world. It just happened that way because of my personal history of trying to get my family back. Even so, Ayula will always give you her blessing. So don't worry too much about Jonah. I don't know him well, but after listening to the story of the Sutra and the Nameless King, he seemed like a good person. The reason Jin's face was always dark was because of Jonah. Okay. Yona is a really good person. I was extremely happy that I had rescued Jonah safely. During the rescue process, there was no fatal damage to the friendly camp. Yona had not undergone any physical transformation, which Jin was most worried about, and he came all the way to the Holy King to prepare for any problems that might arise during the purification of chaos. However, Jonah's chaos was not purified. Although the chaos has not been completely purified like others, we have been able to prevent it from running rampant like before. As they said, the purifier did not have any effect on Jonah. Although purification was impossible, Jonah's chaos has now entered a steady state, like before. Just like when Jonah was overcoming chaos on his own before Gleek's power stimulated him. This was because the chaos that Jonah had was so enormous. Bora's purifier had its limits in being able to participate in the chaos. It's probably similar to the situation Linglin and I had in the past. Yona's chaos would be better if she were separated from her as an annoying but somewhat cute and useful being like Lingling, but half of them were currently in La Perosa. Even if the class takes the initiative, there is no guarantee that they will be able to separate like they did during Lingling, which is frustrating. But you shouldn't continue to worry about that. In any case, it was true that the situation with Jonah had improved significantly compared to before. Thank you. I was just thinking about myself too much. The Holy King has come in person, but there is no Muraken to hand over, so what should we do with this? As soon as she arrived at Taiken, Rani checked on Yona and then asked her colleagues about Muraken's well-being. It's a shame. I'm performing the role of deputy to Soderet's deputy. It seems like an amazing yet clumsy position, so it suits Muraken-sama. For Muraken to return, Talaris' recovery is most important. Because Talaris is injured, Misha is in charge of sealing Alona. I have something to tell you about the Queen. Is this a bad story? I can't say it's good content. This does not mean that there was a problem with Bigungju's recovery. However, the reason her recovery is being delayed is because the time I can devote to her is decreasing. Another problem has arisen in the Holy Kingdom. Rani nods. Yes, it is a sacred relic of the demon race that our Holy Kingdom keeps. Zito's eyes have been showing bad signs recently. Zito's eyes. The Battle of the Holy Kingdom, which took place 500 years ago, when the demons invaded Bankila, is a famous war. However, it was not only the subjects of the Holy Kingdom that the saints of Bankila, Runkendal, and Zifil combined their strength to protect in an unusual way. The name Jito may be unfamiliar to you. It is said that he has never been active in royalties and that few people even in the demon world know his name. Even after I became king, I could not confirm any records about Jito's eyes. As the Holy King, weren't you also able to view the records on that item? That's right. I recently found out that Jito's eyes exist in the Holy Kingdom and that they are showing bad omens. Ayula warned me in a dream. Recalling a dream she had a few days ago, Rani trembled as if in pain. What Ayula showed us was the future of Zito's second coming through that object. The whole world is burning, and that includes you and Muraken, as well as all the beings who could be considered the guardians of royalties dying. If someone else was saying this, they would dismiss it as nonsense, but Rani was a saint. There was no way she couldn't tell the difference between a simple nightmare and Ayula's warning. It's hard to deal with Rosa, but does this mean that a new powerful enemy may appear? To prevent that from happening, I am controlling Jito's eyes following Ayula's warning. Because almost all of the divine power is being used for that matter, the treatment of the Queen Mother is being delayed. Have you heard anything about why Zito's eyes started showing abnormal phenomena? It was said that he was influenced by the remnants of chaos left behind by Gleek. You didn't say anything special about it, but I have a guess. There's one guy that comes to mind to me too. Kingelo. Currently they are the only ones making a fuss about royalties. Kingelo had previously had high-ranking demons like Bianca, and while Jean had been to La Perosa, he had recruited more powerful people from the demon world. I heard that the demon beast King Orgel, who was revealed to be the leader of Kingelo, is one of the rulers of the demon world. I think he definitely has something to do with this. It's a given. The reason they keep attracting demons to Kingelo in the first place is probably possible because they have built something like a passageway to the demon world somewhere. It is said that the demon society completely collapsed after the battle of the Guardians of the Holy Kingdom, but it is certainly true as the Lord said. Even if it is not an external dimension, demons may be brought in through rituals such as summoning. It's a summons. Yes, Ranka Hallowis. Guts is worth seeing. Anyway, according to your explanation, the reason the Great Desert turned out like this is because after it was polluted, all powers used it as an experimental processing site. Are you saying you just liked this place and used it as a playground? Okay. The first one is understandable, but the second one is not enough. You were trying to do something here. I just like it here. The conversation we had after defeating Ranka as soon as he came out with the royalties. Even back then Jean thought Ranka didn't just treat the Great Desert as a playground, but after talking with Ronnie he felt even more suspicious. In the first place, during the Songguk incident, Kingelo must have tried to find Jito's eyes in addition to conducting biological experiments. I think so too. At that time I was only aware of the biogolem experiment, but Kingelo's real goal must have been Zito's eyes. Is it okay to use your divine power to hold on to Jito's eyes to prevent further problems? For now, yes. However, there are no cases of this type of problem, and the information Ayula provided was extremely limited. If Murakan had been here, that bastard Ayula would have questioned why he only gave a vague warning. Ronnie chuckled at the thought that suddenly occurred to her and then wondered for a moment whether it was blasphemy. Then it is not a very urgent problem, but it is a bomb that can explode at any moment. Ayula, a rookie who is extremely reluctant to get involved in royalties, even gave a direct warning, so there is a high possibility that there will be no response if something happens. It will probably be okay until Ayula appears again and tells us. I already have to go to Kingelo for something, so I need to get permission from you. Permission? Is it okay if I open Orgel while directly mentioning Zito's eyes? Of course. Okay, let's harvest and share any information about Zito's eyes from Kingelo. They say they want Lord Bale, but will they give up the information easily? If you pretend not to know or say nothing even when Zito's eyes are clearly mentioned, that is enough. It means that it is information that should never be revealed. That's true too. I think you're thinking of leaving right now, but would you like to have a cup of tea with me? I don't have spatial mobility like the Red Owl, so I came on a regular ship. Of course you should. The space transport ship will be sent to Songguk when mass production becomes possible. Oh, I see, I have received another promise. Thank you, so I as a guest will bring the tea myself. Kingelo new headquarters. They were going to be extremely excited about the fact that they could finally see traces of life today, something they had longed for so long, but unfortunately Bale had already signed a contract with Sandra, so it was inevitable that his joy would be halved. Orgel did not hide his regret even though Jean was in front of him. You really already signed a contract with Sandra Zippel? It was hard to believe it when I heard it. I feel sorry for hearing such a disappointing voice. What can I do? Orgel. This happened as soon as the seal on the veil was lifted. Anyway, I kept my promise. There was nothing in it about you and Veil talking alone, so it would be better for all conversations to take place where I can hear. Phew, that doesn't matter. Cough. Thank goodness. And there's one thing I'd like to ask. What is it? What do you think of Demon King Jito? In response to Jin's sudden question, Orgel coughed repeatedly. Fortunately, it seemed like things had improved a little and there wasn't as much bleeding as before. Did I ask some kind of embarrassing question? The reaction is quite intense. Jean, how do you know that name? Zephyrin narrowed her eyes as Vishkal handed Orgel a handkerchief. I just know. It's just an unknown name. Let's not ask each other too much. The police would ask us how we found out any information we gave them. Take care of your conscience, right? This time, under the pretext of protection conditions, they took Princess Bianca and Prince Ranka and made them do excessive things. Was what Bianca and Ranka did excessive compared to the conditions? The area of Yona's rescue operation was akin. In fact, Zippel, who came after the operation was over, created quite a bit of tension for a while. It looked like they were contemplating whether to attack us. If it weren't for Bianca and Ranka, I might have hit it. It's also a strange story that the conflict was suppressed because of those two people. Did you forget? Jeep is also our temporary ally. The Tower Keeper's betrayal must have been very unpleasant, but they are not stupid enough to break the alliance before the final battle with the evil god. Didn't you hear from Ranka and Bianca? Zippel made threats by saying that the alliance was no longer essential. They say things have changed. I said this once before, but looking back, Kinsalo has always been kind to you. There have been many moments where I couldn't help but help you. Of course, there are many times when we tried to kill each other, but if this continues, we are just like Jeep. Okay. Jin's eyes became harsh. This is so annoying. This guy and that guy all take the temporary alliance lightly, which is ridiculous. If you want to break the alliance, tell me right away and I will listen. However, if it was just a warning and a trivial threat, it would be better not to do it again. At that time, I will be the first to break the alliance. As Jin said those words and raised his energy, a heavy vibration spread in all directions. Vale seemed to be wondering whether he should release his power together, but he remembered Sandra's order to move only when Jin ordered him to do so. In fact, Jin has no intention of breaking the alliance. If Zephyrin answered now, okay, as of today the temporary alliance is over, Jin would joke. I was just joking, why are you doing this? However, I thought it was necessary to properly address the fact that even Kinsalo was acting like this, even though I don't know about Zippel who lost Hito. In other words, Jin is bluffing to prevent Kinsalo from giving him an absurd warning under the pretext of an alliance again. The tension with Jeep is enough to make my head hurt. Kinsalo's side was silent for a moment due to the threats that started in reverse. Other people might not know this, but Jin never once threw out an empty word at times like this. Ha, what? This dog. However, just when Zephyrin, who could not control his anger, was about to pour out the six-headed letter, Orgel opened his mouth. Cough, Zephyrin, don't get excited. It's obvious that Jin learned Jito's name. He heard it from King Song. The Holy King must have received a revelation from Ayula. Judging by the fact that you suddenly brought up the topic of Jito, it seems like there is a problem with his body that Songguk is storing. Orgel made eye contact with Jin. Jin felt surprised every time he casually talked about the secrets of the world like he did now. For now, gather your strength at this point and stop Jin Runkendal. I have no intention of breaking the alliance, so don't show off like that in the future. Is it really that difficult to get along well? In fact, there was nothing wrong with what Zephyrin said except that he carelessly mentioned breaking up the alliance. Kinsalo has always given off the vibe that he wants to get along well with Jin. However, it is no different from the fact that Jin always treats Kinsalo harshly. To Jin, they were still terrorists who recklessly killed and experimented on ordinary people and were enemies that must be eliminated after ending Rosa. So Jin couldn't look at Kinsalo in a positive light. It was certainly not something that should be treated conscientiously. In the first place, I never received help without receiving anything in return. It's not an easy problem. Anyway, there's nothing you don't know, Orgel. Because I lived a long time. To answer your question, Galgal. Jito is a person who is a shame to our demons. But to me he is like a teacher. So you were trying to devour Songguk when I was a reserve jockey? To regain the teacher's body. The biological experiment was carried out concurrently. Whatever you think is fine. But that's a separate problem from dealing with the evil spirit. No, it's related. Because of that, the Holy Kingdom has become unstable and the healing of its main forces is being delayed. One thing I can tell you for sure is that I cannot control the problems that occur with Zito's body. Even if I could control it, I don't think I would. No matter what I say, it may be hard to believe, but it is very burdensome for me to see him waking up now. It sounds like you're saying it would be good for you to wake up after you become whole. Why do you think Ayula and the saints of the past have kept this fact hidden from later generations since the Holy Kingdom took on Jito's body? Orgel burst into laughter. I'm concerned that someone might covet that power. Orgel nodded as he looked at Jean, who responded immediately. You almost got it right. Jito's energy itself has the power to seduce people. So my advice is that you should always be suspicious of your friends from now on. What? It means to hope that the faith of the current Holy King Rani Salome is absolute enough to overcome the temptation. If she becomes corrupted and resurrects Jito, it will be painful for everyone. Just as Jean was about to answer, Orgel burst into laughter once more. It's a joke. If Jito's body had had that effect, the kingdom would have collapsed long ago. Well, I gave Jean a punch. Zephyrin, I hope you feel a little better too. Cough. Zephyrin smiled as if she was very satisfied with Jin's expression. It's been a while since the owner did something I'm grateful for. It's not easy to see Jin Kyung's expression like that, but I think I'll be in a good mood for a week. Thank goodness. He said it was a joke, but Jean couldn't help but feel uncomfortable right away. The reason why the old saints of Ayula and the Holy Kingdom hid Jito's body from the later people was because they could not be sure that it was truly related to Orgel's joke. For the first time in a long time, I have the experience of giving and receiving in return. Make sure you remember that joke. Knowing that Kinjalo really cared about Jito, it wasn't that bad. In any case, Jito will not wake up before the final battle with the evil god. Even though I can't control it, I can predict it to that extent. The moment Orgel said that, Margila came inside, cheerfully rolling her wheelchair from outside. It's late because I took a nap. Nice to meet you, Jin Kyung. I heard you brought Lord Vale? Margila bowed her head towards Bale, who had been standing like a folding screen next to Jean the whole time. Her eyes were sparkling as if she was truly happy to see Vale. Nice to meet you, Lord Bale. This is Margila Eviliano. What do you know about me? I know. You are the most precious being, the trace of life that came from the sun itself. We have been looking for you for a long time. You found me? Taeyong Jin pondered the words Margila said. Now that I think about it, Quicantle said that in the past Vale introduced himself as a creature of the sun. And suddenly Jean looked at Kinjalo's flag hanging large behind Orgel's wall. The flag had a complex image of Kinjalo's symbol, the broken sun. Jean, who couldn't take his eyes off the flag for a few seconds, felt a chill running down his back and goosebumps forming. Are you saying that the parent of life that Kinjalo is trying to resurrect for the ultimate purification they claim is the sun god? There are many gods in the world. From beings like All Mango, who are treated as minor gods by some, to gods who control the vast nature. Most of the various gods have made their names known to the world through contracts with humans. However, not only Jean but most people in the world had never heard of the word sun god. That was a name you would never hear unless a pseudo-wizard claimed to be the sun god and caused a social stir. This was because among the active gods there was no being named sun. Looking back, it was a strange thing. The sun is the object that humans most instinctively worship, but until now there has been no god symbolizing it. Orgel quietly stared at Jean and smiled. What you think is correct, Jean Runkendall. While Jean was surprised, Bale seemed unimpressed by the fact that Kinjalo mentioned the sun god. The reason was that Vale had never met the one who formed him. When he first came into the world, Bale only knew that he was created from the sun. I never met him in person or received any special message from him. Therefore, like Hito 1,000 years ago, Bale was unexpectedly caught up in various events, and in the process he met Sarah and became a teenage knight of Runkendall. Orgel, the reason I brought the veil was because it was said to be helpful for your recovery. So if I see any move by you to take anything further for your purposes, I will take veil and leave immediately. Don't worry about that part. Of course, just your recovery would be a great benefit to you. One side is the sun god, one side is Hilurum, the other side is the demon god stone. Everyone has so many things they want to complete. You are also having a hard time trying to communicate with Sodaret again. That's true, but I wish we wouldn't treat it the same way. I do not believe that being able to communicate with Sodaret again will complete my goal. Even before that, I sometimes wondered about the meaning of the name Kingelo. Was it the name of the god you were trying to resurrect? Yes, that is the name of the being who created everyone here. The true creator, Jean said. Everyone has probably had that thought at least once. If God created the world, then who created God? The answer to that question is usually similar. Either there is another God above God, or he began to exist on his own. Orgel said that it was the sun god, Kingelo. Unlike many fraudsters who have claimed to be the sun god, Orgel's claims were clearly credible. Jean had personally experienced the power of the sun god. Valeria, who was mortally wounded, was completely healed in the area formed by the remaining energy of the sun god, which Zippel called the Holy Land. Moreover, what about the veil of being a creature of the sun? He was born with tremendous power and possessed divine combat power as well as resistance to the manipulation of history, without any training or enlightenment. How are you doing, Sir Jean? Kyung has just discovered the world's biggest secret. Isn't your heart racing? Jean shrugged his shoulders in response to Margiela's question. Even if the sun god really existed, it wasn't a very interesting story for Jean. Rather, it adds one more headache. If we don't defeat Kingelo in time, we'll end up in conflict with such a high-dimensional being. Of course, this was a story about a time when the sun god really existed and resurrection was possible. Well, I don't know. What about you, Baal? I'm not really surprised either. Jean sighed in relief at Baal's indifferent response. If Baal had longed for his unidentified creator, the anxiety factor would have increased. Baal's only interest was Sarah Runkendal. Now that he was faced with the fact that Sarah had already died 1,000 years ago, the world was nothing more than a huge empty space for him. However, as Jean informed us, those who killed Sarah are alive in that vacant lot. For Baal, the last remaining meaning of life was to destroy them. Vale, are you really curious about nothing about the being who created you? Are you deaf? Why are you asking the same thing again? It's annoying. I'm not surprised or curious. Most of Kingelo's executives looked embarrassed by Baal's aggressive response, and Orgel seemed somewhat sad. Rather, it is Orgel, not Vale, who longs for the sun god. Among the demons, Orgel is a demon king with the nickname Demon Beast King. Jean thought that the combination of him and the sun god was very unsuitable. It's a pity that the creator's fragment is no different from any other orphan. He must have known from birth that he was a creature of the sun god. Cough. Hey Jean, I don't like that guy. Can I just hit him? I feel like I'm being treated like a fool. You shouldn't beat a sick person, and now you are an ally. Kingelo's executives continued to be disappointed by Baal's behavior, which they had high expectations of. On the one hand, Jean understood their disappointment, because I felt the same way when I first saw Vale. Lord Vale. Imagine the sun god returning and purifying the world. When Margiela spoke brightly and like a crazy fanatic, Baal snorted. No. What if in the world where he returns, Lord Baal will be able to meet the person he loves most again? Sarah, we can meet again? Sure. The sun god will never overlook Lord Vale's deep sorrow. Baal is after all a piece of the sun god, so his sorrow is also his. The only way for it to be purified is for Sir Sarah to return. At that point, Jean understood more clearly the reason why Kingelo made Zippel and Demonstone in the past. The background to their obsession with Bouvard Gaston. Fragments. It's probably up to that disgusting bastard Bouvard to collect and put the sun god's fragments back together. This means that there may not be one entity like Vale. Once again, Jean realized that Kingelo wasn't such an idiot as he had been. The cards these crazy guys had were all too dangerous. All of my enemies were like that. Just thinking about Rosa was overwhelming, but the thought of the devil and the sun god kept throbbing in my head. I looked at the atmosphere of Baal again. He was a little shaken by the news that he could meet Sarah. Jean decided to stay silent and see how he reacted. Fuck that bullshit. Even if the sun god resurrects Sarah, it is not the Sarah I knew. Another Sandra Ziffel, I guess. So don't ever bring up Sarah again. If it weren't for the ban, you guys would have already been reduced to dust and scattered somewhere in the world. Oh! Jean let out an exclamation. Good answer, Baal. For some reason Jean felt proud when he saw Bale not being deceived at all by Kingelo, who even mentioned Sarah. Lord Vale too. There is a misunderstanding. What I mean is, enough nonsense. Giving you the opportunity to seduce Bale was out of consideration on my part. It's true that I somewhat ignored your kindness. I also heard a little bit about Zito, but since you failed, don't mess with Bale anymore. It means to show Orgel recovering. Cough. Look at this, I'm still coughing like I'm going to collapse. How on earth are you going to fight Rosa when she looks so incompetent? Orgel, when I unsealed the veil, I saw Rosa for a moment. It seems like he's getting stronger faster than you expected. Everyone seems to be worried about when Rosa will move, so let me tell you one thing. It will take at least a year before she can make her own move. Until then, the world will not be destroyed. At the time of the first meeting of the Temporary Alliance, Orgel said that it was highly unlikely that Rosa would be active within a year. It's only been about 3 months since our first meeting where you said it would take at least a year. However, the Rosa I met at the Veil Seal was much stronger than when she hit the Garden of Swords. Did you have any special feelings about this? There was none. However, if what you say is true, the day of decisive battle may be brought forward. Okay. Time, which is already insufficient, is getting tighter. That's why I brought Bale here, even though I knew it would benefit Kingelo. I didn't come to quench your thirst for the sun god. Orgel nodded. For my recovery, the power of the veil must be opened. When Jean winked, a ring formed above Vale's head and wings formed on its back and golden energy radiated out. Then Orgel's body, which was as vague as smoke, began to thicken at a rapid rate. Just as the ground cracked by drought absorbs the sweet rain. Vale was very displeased with his energy being absorbed by him, but he remained silent. Jean, that thing is stealing my power. Can't I block it? If it's permanent damage, try blocking it first. That's not it. It's at a weak level. In any case, it was only a weak level from Bale's perspective. The energy of the sun god he possesses is infinitely close to infinite by human standards. Jean was thinking of Murakan as he watched Orgel's body become more and more clear. It feels similar to when Murakan absorbed my spiritual energy and recovered. It seems to be much more effective than that, but the way Murakan tried to absorb Jin's spiritual energy, as soon as he woke up in the Storm Castle, and Orgel absorbing the energy of the veil looked quite similar. If so, it meant that Orgel was a being created from the sun god. It's the same as how guardian dragons receive power from their gods. Whoa! When Orgel took a deep breath, he was no longer as ghostly as before. The facial features were clearly revealed and the blurry body became a distinct gray color. There are still some blurry parts here and there, but if you cover them up, they look similar to other ordinary demons. However, further recovery seemed impossible through the energy of the veil. The coughing has finally stopped. Now we are closer to other demons. It's been quite a while since I felt this way, but it seems like there is a limit to recovery through the veil, right? For a more complete recovery, Jeep's sacred place is needed. It was not difficult for Jean to guess that the power of the sun god that remained in Ziffel's sacred place was much purer than that possessed by Vale. Congratulations, Master, Zephyrin said to Orgel, kneeling down on one knee. Jean did not notice any change in Orgel's energy after his recovery, but through Zephyrin he noticed that his strength had increased. Zephyrin was spreading a powerful energy that could not be compared to before. If Zephyrin had this much power when they first met at Black King Mountain House, Jin's story would have ended there. Zephyrin is a being that receives power from Orgel. And up until now, Orgel's remaining power had been strained every time, but now, even though Zephyrin's energy was greater than ever, there was no particular damage to Orgel. I finally have some faith, Orgel. I wondered what would happen if I stayed sick until the day of the final battle came. But like in the Caldron snowfields, if you use more power than a certain amount, it won't go bad again, right? Don't worry about that. Now, as long as you don't die, you can always maintain this state. It was a good answer if you only thought about the final battle with Rosa, but it was a terrible story if you thought about the future fight with Kingelo. But like the evil spirit, I also need an adaptation stage. It will take a few days. I'm glad it only lasts a few days. Don't overdo it just because you feel good about regaining your strength after a long time. I'm saying this because I'm anxious because they've only shown me so miserable. Orgel smiled at Jean. I've only regained about 10% of my power, so I'm not happy enough to go crazy. 10% is like this. Didn't I say it during the meeting that if I had been intact in the first place the situation would not have turned out like this? I'm a little distraught because Orgel's words don't sound like bluff at all. Bale quickly turned his head and asked Jean this question. I don't think that person is a patient anymore, but can I beat him? Jean burst out laughing. Jean liked all of Bale's unexpected actions when he came to Kingelo's new headquarters. Zephyrn's threats were unpleasant and Orgel's jokes didn't seem like jokes, but I felt like I had been punched. Bale was coolly stepping forward on his behalf. Kingelo just blinked without answering for a while despite Bale's harsh words. Well, Bale, how about holding on a little longer? If you attack me for no reason, I think you'll explode. Jean spoke as if he was trying to stop Bale, but in fact it was the opposite. What Jean said just now could have two effects at once. The first is to irritate Bale more, and the second is to show Kingelo that he has tried his best to ensure that Bale is polite. As expected, Bale became even more indignant at Jin's words and screamed, "No! No, you will definitely lose. Orgel is the real devil. So don't cause any more trouble and just stay still." As for Jean, he also wanted to see Orgel face off against Vale. It is highly likely that we will not be able to see Orgel's battle in detail during the final battle. I'll have to focus entirely on Rosa. So there was no harm in seeing in advance how Orgel, who regained his strength, would fight when the opportunity arose. Because it will be on a different level from the terrorist attack on Jian Wangxiang. Jean, this is because you really don't know anything. Yes, he might be stronger than me, but I can feel it. What? He can't kill me. That's natural. We're a temporary alliance? You are one of our most important forces. I don't just mean it that way, it's a more fundamental issue. That guy can't kill me with the power he has. That's why I want to hit even if I get hit. Jean looked at Orgel, as if to explain what this means. It is impossible to completely eliminate traces of life unless there is the energy of creation or something equivalent to it. There are very rare beings like that. Like the king of the Black Sea you faced in the past. The reason why you add the modifier perfect probably means that only killing is impossible but sealing and other things are possible. That's why you guys didn't even light up Gleek's nose when he woke up. Jean gritted his teeth as he remembered the Sword Emperor Temple. At that time Kingelo demanded Jin's loyalty as a condition for their participation in the Gleek War. Lord Vale, if you really want to fight me, I have no choice but to seal away some of your power, so that no fatal problems arise in our alliance. So Jean will be more active in stopping it. Oh, I plan to do that. You're particularly unlucky today, Orgel. Isn't it common for each other? Without a spear or equivalent energy, traces of life cannot be killed. Jean thought about that for a moment. In the end, it also means that Changxiang's power will be needed to kill Orgel in the future. Considering the power that Orgel possessed in the first place, even excluding the characteristics of the sun god's power, Changxiang's power was naturally necessary. However, there was one strange thing. But that day at Banji, why did Vale admit defeat to me like that? If Orgel says it, I won't be able to kill Vale. Looking at the way he was fighting Orgel now, Vale was never the type to give in just because his opponent was stronger. Although Vale has never met the sun god, he is aware that he is a divine being, and he is arrogant and self-indulgent to that extent. Is it because you knew I was Sir Sarah's successor? It wasn't a problem to worry about now. When Jean winked, Vale huffed and turned his eyes from glaring at Orgel. I think we've kept our promises to each other, Orgel. Now let's discuss Rosa as allies. As for why Rosa is being completed faster than I expected. Okay, there are some strange things about Rosa's behavior. Tell me. First of all, Rosa has now become such a huge evil that even powerful people like Lord Fadler, who cornered you in the Cauldron Snowfields, are not needed. It's difficult to explain the basis, so it's just something I felt myself. I'll trust you because you won't give a crap about this. It's not entirely impossible. But Rosa is suddenly using Joshua again. He even felt more incompetent than before and failed at all his recent assignments. I blocked them all. What I find strange is this point. Are you saying that there is no reason for a villain to use such an unscrupulous character? Okay. After meeting him in Akin, I continued to worry. What on earth is Rosa's reason for keeping such a wasteful person by her side? After gathering his thoughts for a few seconds, Jean made eye contact with Orgel. I suddenly remembered what you said during our first meeting. Her daughters have only one wish. The second coming of my former lover Hilurim. So are you using humans as sacrifices? It's not exactly human itself. Of course things like human flesh and bones are necessary, but they are not very efficient. The real thing is despair. Only pure massive despair can awaken Hilurim. Despair. Jean had come up with the assumption that maybe Rosa was using Joshua to get pure despair through him. When Jean explained this, Orgel's eyes widened as if he was a little surprised. Otherwise I thought there was no reason for Rosa to keep that trash around. That's a really interesting story, Jean Runkendal. In that case, the accelerated completion of the evil body may have something to do with it. Do you think what I think is right? The second rider of Runkendal was so insignificant that I forgot about it. Human jealousy is sometimes so great that it even surprises the gods. If his sense of inferiority is deep and dark enough to be meaningful even to evil spirits, it is possible. This is an area I had never thought about either. So, does this mean that Joshua doing his job well is actually an inconvenience for Rosa? However, Rosa couldn't intentionally lose to Joshua to prevent him from reaping his despair. If he succeeds in whatever task Rosa entrusts him with, it means that Jean and the people around him will get hurt or die. There is only one solution. The goal is to find Joshua and completely eliminate him, to prevent Rosa from using him at all. I guess so. The only way to deal with this would be to find Joshua and destroy him completely. It won't be easy since the evil spirit will be protecting you directly. It was a natural story. There was no way Rosa would just leave someone with such usefulness unattended. The protection was so subtle that Joshua could not recognize it, but so thorough that no one could ever put an end to it. That was also the reason why Baal missed Joshua in Akin's forest. Protection, protection. Ugh. Suddenly Jean was overcome by a terrible feeling of nausea. Because it was disgusting. The fact that there are people who cannot escape the embrace of the one who made them like that even after they finally fall into despair. Production dolls. The fact that there exists a mother who sends her child from one abyss to an even deeper abyss and doesn't mind just as long as she needs it. Are you okay? Jean nodded, barely holding back the nausea that surged like crazy. It's okay. Anyway, whether my assumption is right or not, Joshua must be eliminated before the final battle. I think so too. Anyway, if the day comes when Joshua Runkendal is alive and does not despair, it will be your despair. You are much more meaningful to the evil spirit than Joshua. Your despair will be much better material than his. Awakening Hilurim. Jean now wondered if despair was really being used to bring Hilurim back. The Rosa he saw not long ago seemed like she was preparing to become a disaster of her own rather than waking up Hilurim. Above all, Jean did not picture Rosa being loyal to Hilurim like a prophet. Who on earth does Rosa fall under? Damn. My worries just keep getting deeper. If that's a good thing. The truth was that Orgel had just regained some of his old strength. Then what you will do from now on is decided, Orgel. I've been resting in a hospital bed, so it's time to move. Are you telling me to kill Joshua? You wouldn't say it would be difficult to regain just that much strength, right? Well, it probably depends on how much the evil spirit cares. But even though you didn't tell me, I was thinking about looking for him. If the evil spirit's protection is so deep that I can't help it, let's just check first. Is his despair really being used by evil spirits? Good, it makes me feel more and more rewarded for bringing Baal in. I hope to hear meaningful news the next time we meet. When Jean stood up as if to leave, Orgel waved his hand and opened a steel portal. Beyond the portal, Tychon's territorial waters were visible. You can use it if you want. On the surface it looked like consideration, but Jean recognized that it was closer to a warning disguised as consideration. As an ally, if you do something stupid, you can get to Tychon in an instant at any time. Unlike before, it seemed like Orgel didn't need much effort to open the portal. There is a boat I came on. As you probably know, it's about moving through space. When Jean responded with the same warning, Orgel smiled. What? As you said, it's common. See you next time then. Afterwards, when he escaped from Kinzelo's new headquarters and boarded the Red Owl, Bale looked at Jean in confusion. Hey Jean. Why? The reason I lost to you in the first place was because of your fire. Jean was about to ask why he suddenly said that, but then remembered thinking about the reason in Kingelo's conference room earlier. Okay? I was suddenly curious earlier. I didn't think it was just because I was stronger, but if it was because of the fire, was that correct? No, you don't seem to know, but the fire you have is very special. And that fire will work on him too. So let's beat that guy together with me someday. Okay.